This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
I just think we want to keep growing our game, and I think we did that. We've taken a couple steps back in games recently, and just keep moving forward.
I think over the past few years, me and Tony, I think it just clicked from the start. I believe we're very similar players in every aspect of our game. Obviously, he's a center and I'm a wing, but when it comes to the zone, the vision, the skill set he has, I think we're very, very similar, and we feed off each other. And obviously, being able to play on the PK together, that gives us a little bit more. And getting to play with Tony, he's responsible everywhere on the ice, and for that reason, that's what creates chances a lot of the times. And he's a heck of a player, and I'm glad that's the guy I'm clicking with.
Luke Glendening and Gary, they'll be the first guys to tell you that they're not going to lead the team in goal scoring, but they do so many. Like, look at Glendening scores shorthanded. The game's 8-2, and Gergenson's laying out blocking a shot with like 20 seconds left. So that kind of tells you the character of these kids. But you still want to be able to get some points, and then I think you look at those and it makes you feel like you contributed more than for us. We know what they contribute, but I think for players it's always nice to get on the score sheet, and they've deserved to get some tonight.
A lot yesterday. Nice to get the depth scoring. Brandon Hagel talking about that chemistry with Anthony Cirelli, and that has been nice to see. That line is really complementing whoever Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, and Jake Gensel play with. It's nice to have two lines that are a threat offensively for sure. And Cirelli, we talked about this yesterday, kind of growing into that role potentially as being somebody who can fill the net with more frequency, as we would say. And they're going to need it tonight against the scrappy Washington team minus Alex Ovechkin. We're going to talk about it for the next hour. It is Power Lunch on Lightning Radio. You can check us out on so many different platforms at this point live. Facebook Live. We're on Facebook, right? Where are we?
I think we're on X Live.
We're on X Live. I got to get used to the Instagram because I don't have Instagram.
We've dabbled on YouTube, the YouTube channel. I'm not sure if we're on YouTube Live regularly.
I don't think we are yet.
Every day, but you can watch us after the fact. And we're available. We are on YouTube today. Thank you,
nice.
Steve.
Love that.
So that is from 12 to 1, but we are accessible after the fact, too. Some people have stuff going on between 12 and 1. They catch us on their ride home. A lot of people have told me they listen on-demand audio in the car on the ride home.
Love that idea. And my dad does the same thing.
An hour or more.
Yeah. My dad can't sometimes get us live, so he'll just either right after the show or if he's running some errands later, he'll pop it on. So it's really a great way. And, of course, the app is tremendous. All the Lightning content.
And the video stream is available on demand, too.
Yeah.
Including on the YouTube channel.
I've had to make sure my hair is looking good.
We're just everywhere, Greg. We're like infiltrating all of the little nooks and crannies, whether people like it or not.
We're never going to leave you.
I shouldn't say that. If they don't like it, they just can ignore us, right?
No, you got to keep listening, because I always love the people that being in this business for a while now, the ones who are always very critical of the show at times, not this show, but at times when I was doing other talk radio, but they would listen. Because they're responding every day. Hey, man, why are you talking about this? Why'd you say? I think you're completely off. I said, okay, well, it's your opinion. We can have a conversation about it. Let's go. But, that's always the most interesting when you talk about audience participation. But we appreciate everybody that listened.
Yeah.
It's 1 hour of just us today.
That is.
We're going to talk about
the case. Yeah. Sometimes we have a guest. Today's game, it's a TNT game. I was actually at the rink this morning. It was an optional. Coop talked at 10:30. The TNT crew is there. Brendan Burke, Darren Pang, and Jen Botterill. They're doing the game tonight. I kind of thought, I think Washington's keeping it pretty short, and I didn't want to ask to keep them later. If they don't need to stay, right?
I get it.
They shouldn't have to stay. So I'm like, you know what, Steve? It'll just be – we have some questions to catch up on, I think, from yesterday.
We want to get into that.
So I headed back home. As you can see, I'm not in studio if you're watching – the video stream, and so we can hit all the bases today in terms of answering fan questions. But what struck me was about like promoting where we are.
Yeah.
And we keep saying it again and again and again and again. So it becomes almost muscle memory for us. I've had a little bit, and you're in marketing and PR, so you understand this. But like whenever I have an event for Blind Squirrel, you know, I'm promoting it. And I have this like niggling feeling and concern that I'm like repeating it right over and over and over again. And that's just because that's my perspective. Now, there may be some people on the receiving end who are like, you're right, Mish, we are hearing way too much about this. But invariably what happens, Greg, is people are like, I didn't know anything about this, and then I heard it this one time.
Sure.
And so it just goes to show, like, you have to keep repeating the same message over and over and over and over again. And the people who are completely in the weeds are hearing it a lot, but there are people who are on the periphery who are hearing it once. And that's really the point of saying it again and again and again. And I'm sure you've experienced that
in both worlds.
In your other job, right?
The other job too, because you've got to be relentless in trying to get your client exposure. And sometimes a reporter gets what you sent and doesn't respond until 2 months later when it's relevant to what they're covering. In other words, hey, I have a guy who can talk about, cybersecurity. Maybe at the time they don't want to talk about it, but then they hit you back up in a couple of months because you've been pretty persistent in staying in touch with that contact, promoting something. You've got something coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, so let me get this
which
out
makes
of the
a lot
way
of
right
sense.
now.
Yeah.
If you're coming to the game on Saturday, Lightning and Maple Leafs, and you were looking for a holiday gift idea, or if you just want to get one for yourself, but especially if you're thinking of getting, should I even say a head start? Some people have already done all of their holiday shopping.
I think a head start. Some people haven't.
Head start.
Some people haven't.
We're still in November, so I'll say a head start.
Yeah, come on.
I'll be out on Fort Thunder Alley starting at 4:30, going to just before warm-up. Steve informed me today that the opening face-off on Saturday is 7:15 due to hockey night in Canada, Lightning Leafs, which means that I can actually stay out in the plaza a little bit longer.
Wonderful.
Fort Thunder Alley, I should say.
Does that mean I have to film longer?
Yeah,
right.
probably. Actually,
yeah.
I think you probably do because warm-ups start a little bit later than normal.
My whole life is filling, so that's fine.
But if you want to get a personalized autographed copy for somebody special, I will be out there, books in hand. And then the following Monday, Paul Kennedy and I are going to be down at Bookstore 1 Sarasota for a ticketed register-only event, but it's free to register. You just have to go to sarasotabooks.com to the events tab, and we are going to be having a conversation about the novel from 6 to 7, downtown Sarasota, Bookstore 1 Sarasota. I've actually been down to that bookstore a couple of times, Greg.
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat space, and they have an upstairs area where they're going to have us. But like these independent bookstores, a few years ago, and I know we're getting off hockey. We'll get back to hockey, but
it's all right.
It wasn't that long ago, Greg, where if you had a client who was an independent bookstore, you might have been scratching your head and like, I'm not quite sure exactly how to crack this. Not everyone's, if they're buying books, they're buying digital, or if it's big box, which they still exist, right? But remember Borders? Borders was...
I do remember Borders.
It was Borders and Barnes & Noble. Well, fast forward just a few years, Borders is no longer, at least in our area. I don't know if they've gone away everywhere. Barnes & Noble had to kind of look in the mirror, I think, and restructure how they did things. But independent bookstores, local independent bookstores have definitely had a renaissance. Yeah. And we have a handful of them in our area. And a number of them have welcomed me to come for events. Yeah. So we had the one at Tom Below, earlier this month, and PK and I will be down at the Sarasota bookstore on Monday. Yeah.
That's what you want. So that'll be exciting. And, if people need to do some early Christmas shopping, that's a perfect, as I've said to you before, stocking stuffer, so to speak, which is really good. By the way, Nick Alberga, this is a little programming note, texted me. He's going to be in the house on Saturday, so he wants to maybe he invited himself on the show.
Books. Hey Nick, you want to come on Power Lunch?
Well, he invited himself on the pregame show. I said, sure, let me talk to Steve. I'm sure we can squeeze you in.
No, it'll be good to see Nick.
Yeah, so he's going to have a lot of fun, but
this is a good weekend for people from Toronto to come down. So look, Canadian Thanksgiving is different than American Thanksgiving.
Is it past Canadian Thanksgiving, right?
I believe so, yes. I
would
feel
say
like
they
a lot
already
of
had
times we're in Canada when Canadian Thanksgiving occurs.
Yeah.
This is U.S. Thanksgiving, though, which they designate differently. So the Maple Leafs are playing the Panthers tonight, Wednesday.
Interesting.
I don't think they play again. I should look that up. I don't think they play again until Saturday. So if people are looking to get out of the getting cold weather, if not outright cold weather in Toronto, and they want to see the Maple Leafs play the Panthers and Lightning,
Sure.
they can come down. Nick's probably got that idea, right, to come down for several days. Bear with me as I check the Maple Leafs schedule.
I would think so. And why wouldn't you want to leave?
Yeah,
Toronto
they
to come
don't
down
play.
here
They
anyways?
play. So the Lightning actually finish a back-to-back against a rested opponent that's going to be in Tampa waiting for them.
Yeah.
But the Leafs play the Panthers tonight, then they do not play again until Saturday.
Okay.
So that, I'm sure Toronto fans circled this stretch of 4 to 5 days on their calendar as a potential road trip.
Yep.
Come to Florida for 4 to 5 days, see the Leafs play twice. So we're probably going to have a healthy contingent of Toronto fans, as we usually do when the teams play at Amalie Arena. Anyway, that's up to you if you want to invite Nick on the program.
Yeah, we'll see.
You can make your own demand.
We'll see.
Right?
Yeah, I can make my own demand. I think it's safe to say, whether it's Canadian Thanksgiving, whether it's here in the States, our Thanksgiving, would it be safe to say, based off of preseason predictions, that the Washington Capitals might be the biggest surprise so far?
Yes, one of the biggest surprises, and you would probably be very surprised to know, Greg, that the area where the Caps have improved the most, they've improved defensively. They got in the playoffs last year because they defended well. They didn't defend at an outstanding level. They were middle of the pack. I think they finished 16th or 17th in goals allowed per game. But they were 28th last year in goals for per game. Quarter of the way through the season, they are tied for first with the Winnipeg Jets, goals for per game. And yes, Ovechkin has had a great start. He's hurt. 15 goals, which certainly helped. But it's not only him. They are getting scoring up and down their roster. Their leading scorer is Dylan Strome. He's had more assists than goals, and certainly Ovechkin with his 15 goals. He leads the Caps in goals. But when you are tied for first in the NHL in goals for per game, and you basically have one guy or two, if we want to include Ovechkin because he has lots of goals, you have two kind of in that first page of leading scorers in the NHL, and that's it. That tells you that you are getting depth scoring. Spencer Carberry probably has not gotten enough credit for the job he has done taking over this team and transforming them into a team that can defend, which they are defending, and a team that now can score. Because I don't think anybody feared the Capitals offensively last year, even with Ovechkin in the lineup. This year, they are a team to be feared, and the Lightning shut them out in the first meeting, which now that we're a little farther into the season, we can look back at that game and say, boy, that was an impressive
Might be one of their better
performance.
wins. We just got off talking about the Colorado game, but based off of what we know, a little bit of revisionist history there, but you would take it. And listen, we talk about the Caps and scoring. I don't think anybody, because wasn't in that first game, wasn't the comment or the observation, I think Phil made it to you, the next time we had a game in the booth at Amalie Arena that we felt like maybe Ovechkin looked a little slow. He's got, how many goals has he had before this broken leg?
Well, he hasn't gotten faster.
No, but I mean 15 goals, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he's shooting, he's getting the puck in areas to score, and he's not doing it exclusively on the power play. I mean, he's a pretty healthy plus player.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
When you think about
it's the only time, by the way, the Caps have been shut out in a game this year. So before he got hurt, Ovechkin had scored 7 goals in 5 games.
Yeah.
Including a hat trick. And he was doing it 5-on-5. He was doing it on the power play. I mean, he plays a lot on the power play. There's only one guy who is averaging more ice time per game in the NHL on the power play this year. So that tells you, like, Ovechkin's minutes are not incredibly high overall. I mean, they're moderate. He's played more in his career before. Right. But, like, a healthy portion of his minutes come on the power play. I'm actually going to get the numbers here right now. So Ovechkin, his overall minutes are 1736. That's middle of the pack. I mean, you know, Kuch is over 20. Ovechkin's not over 20. Power play ice time per game, though, 4 minutes and 39 seconds, averaging.
Yeah.
So basically, when the Caps get a power play, Ovechkin is out there for the full 2 minutes.
That's not unusual,
unless they score,
right? That's not unusual, and he only had 4 power play goals out of his 15.
That's what I'm saying.
That to me, that's impactful. What he's doing beyond the power play to a degree. I mean,
the only guy with more power play time per game is Pasternak. And then Marchand is third. So Marchand and Pasternak, Lightning haven't seen the Bruins yet.
Right.
And Lindholm, check this out. The top 5 guys, average ice time on the power play per game, Ovechkin is second. The other 4 in the top 5 are all on the Bruins.
Yeah.
So Pasternak, Marchand, Elias Lindholm, and Charlie McAvoy. So basically, the Bruins' top unit basically stays out for the full 2 minutes.
Right.
Or they just get a lot of power play chances relative to other teams.
It's not a surprise when you have the record they do. I mean, they come into tonight 14-6-1.
The Caps you're talking about.
The Caps. I mean, basically everybody is a plus player in double digits. The only one that's not, and it's not his fault, playing on a bad team, Lars Eller.
Right.
He was with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and he's starting to climb out of that hole.
He's going to climb out of that hole because they're starting to defend. So, you know, it's interesting if you were to look at the Caps and say, what has been the winning formula? What's been the biggest reason they've gotten off to this surprise start? And I think goaltending probably falls underneath it. It would be team defense.
Yeah, what's interesting is, so their goalies have basically alternated every game. In other words, whether it's Charlie Lindgren or Logan Thompson, that guy is getting every other game. There was one stretch where I think Thompson played 2 in a row. So it was Lindgren's turn when the teams met back in October, and the Lightning won. Lindgren played pretty well, I thought, in that game, honestly. It was a 3-0 Lightning win. That was the game in which Connor Geekie scored his first NHL goal, and it came in the third period, and that goal made it 3-0. The Lightning were up 1-0 after 2. They scored 2 early in the third to pull away. Charlie Lindgren's record is .500. Logan Thompson's record, 9-1-1. So there has been a difference statistically between Thompson and Lindgren. But it's hard to know if the team is playing any differently. Or, like, are they playing better in front of Thompson? Or is it just that Thompson has himself played a little bit better? Unknown. It is Lindgren's turn. In other words, Thompson played the last game, which was a Washington win against the Panthers. So we'll see if Lindgren is in the Washington net tonight. Logan Thompson, interesting, has never played against the Lightning.
Really?
In his career. Yeah, I mean, remember he was in Vegas and they had a rotation of all these different goalies. And the Lightning only played Vegas, twice a year. So they've never seen Logan Thompson. They have seen Charlie Lindgren. To answer your question, I think it is a lot the team defense. I was actually impressed with how the Capitals played in that first meeting, even though the Lightning won 3-0. The other part is they have been a very, very stingy third-period team. Remember, I just told you the Lightning scored 2 third-period goals against the Caps. Washington has played 21 games. They have allowed only 13 third-period goals, and 2 of them came in that game against the Lightning. So if you are keeping the other team off the board in the final period, you are giving yourself a chance to close out games, and you're giving yourself a chance to rally if you are down.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too.
It gets into this question, and we've talked about this a lot, with when you get to a certain standard, how are you viewing the regular season? And are there more ebbs and flows than you would like in the way you'd want to play and how hard it is to be a team who's defense first through an 82-game season, mainly because you have to be. The Lightning want to improve their 5-on-5 play. We've talked about this defensively, but I think it's still a roller coaster if you're going to get that consistent defensive performance for 82 games. Playoffs are different because we've seen them tighten things up. But I think that's always been an interesting question with a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, who view the regular season as basically a vehicle to get into the playoffs. Yes, would they like to be good 5-on-5 defensively? Are there things you want to shore up? No doubt about it. But there's never really a question of whether or not they have the ability to get into the playoffs. It's always viewed over the last decade, the Lightning are one of the 8 best teams in the East, and if they do what the Lightning typically do, they'll get into the playoffs, and they're going to be a bear to deal with in the postseason. Because the Capitals have had a lot of transition over the years, and they've had a Stanley Cup run with Alex Ovechkin, but then have certainly taken a step back, you view them differently. And you view them differently from this perspective. They are no longer the team that won that cup.
They really aren't. I mean,
they've
how
had
many
to do some
players
things
are
differently
left from that team?
I mean, it's
Ovechkin
Tom Wilson
and Carlson
and Wilson,
right?
Yeah, those 3. And if you want to throw Lars Eller in there, because I think Eller was part
back,
of the
right.
So let's throw him in there. So there's basically 4. The culture has completely changed, different from the Lightning because they have still what, Dave, 7, 8 players left from their last Stanley Cup run, but they've had to reinvent themselves. And they do that in teams that are kind of in that position. Maybe you're playing a lot of younger players. Maybe those star players that you won cups with are no longer there. What's the one thing you can do that gives you the best chance to make the playoffs when you deal with all that change? And it's to become a very good defensive team.
But Greg, look, I agree with you, but that does not take into account the fact that they're scoring over 4 goals a game as well.
100%. And I think that's what's shocking. Now, I think Ovechkin is leading the way. And, you know, we talk about the one mainstay who's been there from those cup teams. He's kind of leading the charge. Now, we'll see how that plays out with him being out. I mean, he has a broken leg, right? That's a big deal.
But not like a Stamkos broken leg.
No.
I mean, I think it was, about 6 weeks? I think he was expected to be out.
And he's a physical freak. So you would think he would come back, but still at his age, anytime you break a bone, we'll find out. But I think the scoring is going to come and go. Do we think the Caps are going to average 4 goals a game for an 82-game season?
Well, if they were leaning heavily on their power play, you might say the power play is going to go into a dip, but they're really not leaning heavily on their power play. They've been a dynamite 5-on-5 team. Remember, I gave that stat on yesterday's show. They were second in the 5-on-5 goal ratio. They are tied for 21st in the NHL in the power play. I mean, you just said yourself, Ovechkin has only 4 of his 15 goals have come on the power play.
What's funny, I thought those numbers would be flipped. Really good on the power play still,
right?
But maybe you struggle to score 5-on-5 because maybe there's more uncertainty up front or guys who aren't as proven.
They're getting depth scoring.
They are.
So let me look at their roster.
I mean, Strome.
So Connor McMichael has 13 goals.
Yeah.
He's kind of like Ovechkin in that, you know, he's got double-digit goals and more goals than assists. Strome has been their playmaker. He's got 29 points, 23 on assists. But, you know, Alexi Protas has 7 goals. Nick Dowd, their fourth-line center, has 5 goals. Wilson has 6. Andrew Mangiapane has chipped in 4. Jacob Chychrun has 6.
That's incredible.
He's had a resurgence. Leaving Ottawa really helped him.
And you kind of need that a little bit to get to where they are. Some guys need that.
Yeah.
I mean Strome is 29 points through 21 games. I mean, he's always been a good player, right, Dave? But, I mean, the pace he's on. Now, he did have 67.
He's evolved into I'll call him a high-end NHLer. I mean, he was a 3rd overall pick. But I think he's just the last couple of years realizing kind of the –
Yes.
When you go 3rd overall –
there's an expectation there, isn't there?
And it's not just the team that drafted him, which was, Arizona, I think, and then he got moved to Chicago.
Yes, that is correct.
But it's not just the team that drafts you. Like, I think there's a consensus that it's not like at that point, whatever it was, 31 teams, 30 teams saw this guy as maybe a late first rounder, and one team was like, we're taking him 3rd. I mean, most teams would agree that if he's not 3rd, he's, certainly top 10, probably top 5. and it's just taken him a little bit of time. He, for the most part, hasn't really played on successful teams, which maybe affected him. But it's not just that he's got 29 points in 21 games. He's plus 17. I think the Caps, I was impressed with their D-core in the first meeting, too.
Yeah.
So Chychrun clearly has come in and slotted right in.
Pedigree there.
The Caps made a really savvy move a couple of years ago when they acquired Rasmus Sandin.
Yes.
He is also plus 17.
He's a good player.
The Caps got him from Toronto. I'm trying to remember who went back in that deal. I think it was a let's get ready for the playoffs type deal for Washington. And so they said goodbye to a young defenseman who was a prospect. And this guy has continued to improve and to grow and blossom into I'll use this term again, high-end NHL.
Eric Gustafsson and a first-round pick in 2023.
So, look, he fetched a first-round pick. Gustafsson's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But Sandin is going to be a cornerstone piece on the blue line for Washington for quite some time. Matt Roy is a sneaky good pickup. He was hurt in the first meeting. Longtime member of the LA Kings. Very, very solid defenseman. So your 6D are Roy, Chychrun, Carlson, Sandin, Martin Rivalry, who is kind of a defensive defenseman, but he's kind of been in their top four for quite some time. And then Trevor Van Riemsdyk, who would probably slot in the bottom pair, but reliable. I mean,
a veteran guy, right?
Player.
I mean,
yeah, exactly. And then their seventh guy is Dylan McElrath, who hasn't played since Roy returned. He did play in the first meeting because Roy was injured. So, look, that's a pretty solid
team. Yeah,
that's
it's
a solid.
good team.
I mean, it's not just the names, and people might be like, well, who's this guy? Rivalry, if you haven't really followed the Caps, he's been in the league for a while. It's not just who they are, it's how they are playing as a group. And John Carlson has had some years where he's always been talented offensively, but he's had some wobbly defensive seasons when the Caps have struggled more recently. Maybe not last year, but prior to that. And he has had a resurgent year. He's plus 14. They've been a very, very good 5-on-5 team. And so you said it starts with team defense. Yes. I think it actually, based on the first meeting, from what I saw, it starts with their group of 6D.
And that's fair.
Who are very efficient at moving the puck out from the defensive zone.
And that means you're not spending, you would think, as much time in your own zone, which means you're not putting a ton of pressure on the goaltenders. And you look at the goaltender save percentage, I mean, it's not based off of what their win-loss record is. I mean, it's not anything like .930.
Right, which
or
means
.935.
you're suppressing shots.
Correct. So, credit to them. I mean, your point is well taken. What I was just saying is I think they found a formula to really get the most out of these players. The depth scoring, I think, is tremendous. Do I think that scoring is going to continue 4 goals a game? My sense is not, but I could be proven wrong. But if you're defending, or you're not spending as much time in your own zone because your defensemen are able to get the puck out quickly, it's one thing we've talked about with the Lightning, then that is a good recipe to get into the playoffs.
You can afford to lose a goal a game if you're defending at a high level.
That is 100% correct.
I mean, that's kind of what you're saying.
That is it.
Yeah.
That is it. That is it. So, look, maybe they found something there, but no doubt, I'm not sure anybody thought they were going to be in this position, but kudos to them getting off to the start they did, and the Lightning better be ready to go from the start in this game. So, we talk about, okay, what is the Lightning? What do they need to do? And I think when you have a team that's coming off the game they did against Colorado, you want to keep that same formula, Dave, if you can, going into tonight's game against Washington. And when I look at the back end for Washington, you mentioned guys who can get the puck out quickly, and maybe that's been some of the recipe for them being successful, not spending as much time in your own zone. What is the one benefit the Lightning have had over the years is playing in the other team's own zone with their offensive play. And this is where maybe that forecheck puck possession comes into play tonight between Tampa Bay's offense and what Washington wants to do to get the puck out. If you can hammer those defensemen, dump and chase, not be too cute, and force Washington to defend in their own zone, and then the key, the shooter's mentality. Get those shots on goal. Test Washington's goaltenders. They look good. They've won a lot of games. The save percentage isn't great. It's good. It's not great. But this is one of those where when you do control the puck, get it to the net, and let's see what happens. Because I think we saw, to a degree, that happen against Colorado. And I think tonight against Washington, I'm sure that's going to be part of the game plan if they can. Get the puck in, play in their zone, and let's get some shots through. Let's not pass up some opportunities, and let's make them defend.
Yeah.
Let's just make them defend. Easier said than done, but I think we saw it against Colorado.
And we
It can happen.
didn't really see it in the first meeting. I mean, the
No.
Lightning only had, I think, 21 shots in that game.
Correct.
They just happened to, shouldn't say they just happened to pop in 3 goals. I mean, Chafee had a great tip on the first goal. Kucherov made a fantastic pass to Point, who outweighted Lindgren at the side of the net and chipped it in, and then a face-off win leading to a geeky one-timer. I mean, these were all scoring chances that the Lightning converted on. But flow of play, the Caps had the puck a lot more than the Lightning did in that game, and that's probably something the Lightning would look to reverse tonight. And they're going to have to do it without Mitchell Chafee. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I was at John Cooper's press conference this morning. He was very forthcoming about the lineup. So Chafee did take part in the optional skate, but he is out tonight. So Cam Atkinson slots in. The Lightning are still going with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. Vasilevsky gets the start. So there's your lineup. So it's the same lineup, except Atkinson comes in for Chafee.
If you're Cam Atkinson, Dave, you can't wait to get to the ring tonight.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And build on that last game.
Build off of it, man. That's
in
all you got to
Columbus, where
do.
He scored a goal.
And, these are games that you should be able to get up for. I know it's the night before a holiday, but it's a good team you're playing against. This is it's not a playoff game, but it's more than a game against the Western Conference foe who's in the bottom of the standings. It's the Washington Capitals. I've made the case a number of times on this show. I think it's changed, of course, when you talk about Toronto and Boston and what that means, and the Florida Panthers. But I feel like before that rivalry really began with the Panthers and the Maple Leafs, I always felt like Washington was a really good rivalry for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, well, it was one-sided for a while. Like, once
For sure.
Ovechkin entered the NHL, and then fast forward a couple of years when they started to get to the playoffs
Yeah.
every year, there was one point, I think they won 13 or 14 in a row
Yeah.
against the Lightning. And that coincided with the Lightning struggling in the standings and eventually drafting Stamkos and Hedman and, missing the playoffs, and the Caps were feasting on the Lightning in particular.
On some of those
they were
teams.
also in the same division during that time period, so they played each other a lot. So there were a lot of very
Yes. They're an easy
frustrating
team not to
games.
like because of Tom Wilson and say what you want about Ovechkin.
He wasn't there yet, but yes.
No, but I mean, like recently, you remember the playoff game, Wilson and Coburn coming out of the penalty box and fighting. There's the Wilson-Chernak history of dropping the gloves. That's always something to kind of keep an eye on. It's just Ovechkin has always been an easy guy to not like for whatever reason. You can admire the abilities for sure, but it's
Spoken
always
like a true Pittsburgher.
it's always been like
I'm not
because
sure
he's
people in our nation's capital feel the same way.
well, I don't
but
care about them. No, but I mean, he's always been a physical
Yeah,
player, and I think he's had some big hits over the years, and he's a big man. I mean, they list him at 240. Would you say he's probably closer to 260? I mean, that guy's
Yeah,
just a
that's a good
monster
question.
in many ways. So I think it's good to have teams like that in the NHL. Tom Wilson, I think, is a big reason for that. But I've always felt like Washington and Tampa Bay have always had some spirited games over the last handful of years, and it's always been fun to watch those games. And when Ovechkin played, you were watching. Now looking back on it, maybe the greatest goal scorer of all time. Say what you want about it. I mean, it's pretty incredible, and for his sake, hopefully he gets healthy and we get the chance to see history.
teams will
which is
finish
pretty neat.
their season series in early March in DC.
Yep,
So
he should be back.
I'm guessing
by then,
Ovechkin
right?
will be back at that point. He
Yeah.
is
How many-
26 goals away from
Yeah.
tying the Gretzky record,
Yeah.
27 away from breaking the record.
Yep.
So we'll see how productive he is once he returns from his injury. He is going to have to maintain the pace that he set, though, in the first,
Right.
16, 17 games where he was scoring 15 goals if he's going to get that record this year. And we'll see. Like, it's one thing to be cleared to play. It's another thing to kind of get back into the swing of things, right?
Sure.
So it may take him a little while to kind of ramp it up. But for his sake, hopefully he just comes right back like riding a bike and picks up right where he left off. And as Phil has often said, if you're playing for a good team, and the Caps this year are a good team, you figure he is going to get opportunities to shoot and score.
Yep. It's been a good formula.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But I think if you're him, too, and we'll get some questions, I think if you're Ovechkin this late in your career, did you anticipate this type of resurgence from the Capitals organization? And I just compare it to look what's happening in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. It's kind of quickly that thing sometimes goes off the rails. What are you doing to keep it afloat when you have an aging star?
Well, what's interesting is, so the Caps affiliate in the American Hockey League, the Hershey Bears, my former employer, we were not affiliated with Washington when I was there, but they've been affiliated with the Caps for, goodness, it's probably close to 20 years now. So the Bears have won back-to-back Calder Cups. So you might think logically, they have this juggernaut minor league team with all these hotshot prospects. Those prospects have come up and helped the Capitals. Not really. Connor McMichael is a guy, he was basically up all of last year, and he played in Hershey, but he wasn't really part of the Bears championship last year. With Ovechkin's injury, they've called up Ivan Miroshnichenko, who played against the Lightning in a game last year. He's a prospect. He's a first-round pick, but it's not like he's been part of what the Capitals have been doing this year. So if you were to ask me, how have the Capitals done it, I think their general manager has made some savvy moves, and one of those moves includes hiring Spencer Carberry to be the coach. But we talked about Sandin.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we talked about Sandin, and even bringing back Lars Eller, that's a really good move. Chikrin, they've found ways. What is the term? Retool, not rebuild. The Caps have found a way to elevate their play without breaking the whole thing down, and starting with 20, 21, 22-year-old prospects, and kind of living through the journey that a young player has to go through to get to the point where you want that player to get. Let's not forget, Ovechkin came into the league in 05, 06, and the Capitals were not a good team. They drafted Nicholas Backstrom with the 4th overall pick in 2006, which tells you what that season was like for Washington. They missed the playoffs that year. They missed the playoffs the next year, and then they just got in. And it was near the end of the season. They squeaked in. I think they actually won the division, but the division was weak, so they got the 3rd seed in 08. And then they were off and running. But, if you have young, high-end players, sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Now, the Bears also won the Calder Cup in 06. That team had a lot of guys who would then go on to play for Washington and help the Caps as they got into, President's Trophy range, right? Whether it was Mike Green or Brooks Lake. A lot of these guys played in Hershey when they won the 06 Calder Cup, and then they came up. This Washington team is a little different. You look at their roster, and it's not like they've brought up a bunch of guys. Protas, I think Alexi Protas played in Hershey. But you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
They've kind of done it. They found existing NHLers to bring into their team, and they've been able to kind of tighten it up. And
Pierre-Luc
make
Dubois,
themselves really
probably the wild card. We haven't even talked about him. I feel like he's
always looking for that next home. It
isn't
feels
he?
Like, and never has really fit into the point.
Never.
That the team has said we really need to keep this guy. Duhaime is another. He came from Minnesota. I think he was traded to Colorado at the deadline last year. Lapierre, I think played in the minors, but he's been up for a couple of years. So Mangiapane's another one. They brought him on.
Mangiapane had a run there with Calgary a little bit, where he put up some decent numbers.
Taylor Radish, Lightning fans know him well. It's
minus
like
player.
He came from the minors.
One of the few players that's minus.
Yeah. Anyway.
You want to get some questions?
Yeah.
Thomas says, the Jekyll and Hyde nature of this team is maddening. You can have games against Pittsburgh and the Avs where they look so structured, than a game like Columbus where they're just skating like a bunch of individuals. Is this just matchup based?
No.
Kind of talked about that.
No. This is the ebbs and flows of a regular season. It's the rare team that doesn't have an off night, and people might be saying, well, they've had this off night and that off night. And look, they would like to get to a higher level of consistency, but I think the Lightning's game in Columbus, I said it at least after that game, I felt it was a one-off, and now we're 2 games removed from that game, and we have not seen a repeat of how poorly they played in Columbus since. They lost the Dallas game, but they were much better with their overall game and much better defensively against Dallas than they were against Columbus. Colorado had an off night the other night. I mean, I mentioned that. It happens to teams.
And I think if it's going to happen, it's usually on the road.
Can be.
If you're going to have a one-off and really just a clunker, a lot of times it does just happen on the road. Jay says Cirelli played a lot with Stamkos 5-on-5 the past few years, and it just didn't work well. One of the greatest Lightning what-ifs is, what if Stamkos doesn't break his leg in 2013, 2014? Probably more 60-goal seasons and cups sooner.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you
this
make
is
of
kind
that?
of what we said about with Lemieux, right?
Yeah.
You can't go back and live in some alternate universe when an injury or injuries didn't occur. In Mario's case, getting cancer, having back problems. Stamkos has had significant injuries through his career: a broken leg, torn meniscus, the abdominal issue that affected him in the bubble. He had the blood clot.
I was going to say.
Yeah, so the blood clot kept him out of the playoffs, 2016 playoffs. Until
he came
the
back for
last
game 7, right?
Right. That was right at the end of the regular season. So if we're looking at like regular season numbers, it didn't really affect him. But the fan pointed out cups. If Stamkos doesn't have a blood clot, how different do the Lightning look in the 2016 playoffs? Maybe they beat Pittsburgh.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Stamkos is healthy and playing the whole way through the playoffs, we'll never know. So he kind of talked about Cirelli and Stamkos.
What do you make of that?
The Lightning have had a wealth of riches in terms of true centers, to the point that they've had to put some centers at wing, and Stamkos has fallen into that category. Cirelli at times has fallen into that category. So I don't remember Cirelli and Stamkos. They played together some
with Killorn, right? Didn't those three sometimes they put them together?
They rotated it a fair amount. And maybe I'm forgetting that, but I remember Hagel with Killorn and Cirelli, which I guess is 2022. When we're thinking about the playoffs, 2020 playoffs, Stamkos didn't play. Who was he with in 2021? He might have been with Cirelli and Killorn, because the Lightning had Palat.
I want to say yes.
Yeah, the Lightning had Palat with Point and Cooch. So I don't know. I mean, look, I think they played together. This is more about Cirelli doing more
I would agree.
to either get open or get to areas where he can score and or finish those chances. And I don't think Stamkos being on the line or not being on the line really had any bearing on him doing that less frequently earlier and him doing it more now. He is giving full credit, though, to Brandon Hagel. They play much the same game. They are a thorn in the opposition side to play against. That is true when it's 5-on-5. That is true when they are shorthanded. How often in a game are they kind of getting the puck through the neutral zone and looking to attack into the offensive zone shorthanded? Maybe it doesn't lead to a shot or a chance, but they're putting the other team like on guard, right? You don't want to have to like worry about an opposition attack when you were on the power play.
Sure.
And Cirelli and Hagel do that to the other team.
Yeah. I think for Cirelli, as I told you before, I think being exposed to playing with some of these elite players, playing with Hagel, I think when you play with other skilled players, it does force you to come out of your shell a little bit and adapt. And maybe we're seeing that. And maybe we're just seeing a mature hockey player at this point. I don't know. But it's whatever we're seeing, we want to keep seeing it, because he's looking for a 7th straight game for a goal tonight, and that would be tremendous.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's the longest goal streak in the NHL this year at 6, and it's 2 away from the Lightning franchise mark. I don't know if I should use the word chatter, but both Eric Erlenson and Ed Encina wrote an article about this
Team Canada
yesterday. Not well for the Four Nations face-off.
Yeah, right.
And it wouldn't be that Anthony Cirelli is going to make the team ahead of Nathan McKinnon, who's already on the team. Like Nathan McKinnon is going to do what Nathan.
That's a
McKinnon
poll
does.
question. Who do you rather have, Cirelli or
Right. So, like, the fact that Cirelli is scoring is getting some attention, but I think the bigger question is, and this is also related tangentially to Ryan McDonough maybe being on the Team USA Four Nations face-off squad.
Right.
Do you want a mix of players who can do different things for your team, or do you want just like, for forwards, let's say, the 12 most dangerous offensive players who are native to your country? And Cirelli would provide a mix, whether it's you can use him on penalty kill, you can use him in matchup situations, and he can produce. Same with McDonough. Like, is McDonough the most talented offensive defenseman or even overall defenseman that Team USA can find? Maybe not. But he will slot in a way where if you have Quinn Hughes and you have Adam Fox and you have Zach Werenski, all U.S. born, maybe you want a Ryan McDonough there to kill penalties, to be the shutdown guy on D. So I think that's where the Cirelli talk, if I can use that word.
And
came
hockey's a little bit different because, the first inclination is, well, just do what the dream team did in basketball and just roll out your 5 best players. Basically, you're playing the most, and you're just that much talented than everybody else. And could you have somebody who plays 35, 40 minutes a night?
You can isolate talent in basketball, though.
You can in hockey. So,
Yeah,
but
it's
like
harder to do in hockey.
But you're not going to find, like, Ryan McDonough is still a high-level player. Anthony Cirelli is still a really good NHL player. So if you have him as your fourth-line center, that's okay. You're still going to have to kill penalties, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to have Sidney Crosby. I mean, you could, but you would have Sidney Crosby kill penalties too?
He can.
He can, but you don't want him doing that.
Yeah.
You
And
want
I'll
somebody
tell
else
you-
doing
I'll
it.
tell you, Greg, when we were in Pittsburgh, I can't remember if you said this. Maybe you said it too, but I heard from some people when we were in Pittsburgh, like Mike Sullivan loves Ryan McDonough. Mike Sullivan is coaching Team USA. Now, Mike Sullivan, after he was with the Lightning, so he was an assistant coach with the Lightning under John Tortorella, and then there was a weird sequence there where the Lightning hired Barry Melrose, fired Barry Melrose, promoted Rick Tocchet, and Mike Sullivan was actually still under contract. I don't know if you know this story.
Tell me this
So
story.
Mike Sullivan was under contract still with the Lightning because he had been hired to be an assistant coach under Torts the year before.
Yeah.
So 16 games into the 08-09 season, Barry Melrose is let go. Rick Tocchet is elevated to head coach, and the Lightning needed an assistant coach. Well, they're already paying Mike Sullivan. So Mike Sullivan returned and was one of the assistants on that 08-09 team. And they maybe knew each other. They were both in Phoenix, Tocchet and Sullivan. I'm not sure if they were there at the same time.
Yeah.
But they definitely connected. And that was when Tocchet was head coach and Sullivan was assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward a few years later, Mike Sullivan is the head coach in Pittsburgh. He brings on Rick Tocchet as an assistant coach.
That's a good story.
But Sullivan, after that 08-09 season, went to become an assistant with the Rangers when John Tortorella became the head coach with the Rangers. And they were both there when Ryan McDonough turned pro.
Gotcha.
So Mike Sullivan has a history with Ryan McDonough when McDonough was newer to the NHL. And it would make sense then that he would hold him in high regard and probably talk to
that he would make the team.
And be like, whoever we have, like we have some really great candidates on D that are dynamic. I mean, how can you not have Quinn Hughes on that team? Mm-hmm. How can you not have Adam Fox on that team? How can you not have Zach Werenski on that team? But it sounds like if Sully gets his wish, like McDonough is going to be part of that conversation too. Which
I don't
speaks
know.
to the reputation McDonough has.
And I don't know, is your team suffering if you're having Ryan McDonough part of your top 6
Probably
or top
not.
7? No, I mean, come on. I mean, it's a pro's pro. And
would you rather have Zach Werenski or Ryan McDonough if it came down to that? And I'm assuming Werenski's going to be on the team. But like, let's say you're down to the last spot. Who are you going to take? I mean, that's what it might come down to. I'm probably forgetting other U.S.-born defensemen that might fill that role, right?
You're not going to go wrong with who you select. Let's put it that way.
Probably not.
In that situation.
Yeah. But
I
you're
mean, you
building
really
a
aren't.
team. You're not
You are.
building an all-star game.
The 12 best players.
Roster.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not necessarily your 12 most talented players.
Yeah.
Lucas says, I'm not blaming the poor kid, but Vasi does have a goals against of 2.24, and Jonas is 5.22. I don't know why we can't play better in front of him, but if that number is lower, they can be much closer to 2.5 and 2.75 as a team. Talking about goals allowed.
Right. Yeah, because we talked about that yesterday. They have not played well in front of Johansson in his 3 starts. The Lightning have a back-to-back coming up. I don't know this to be the case for sure, but I guess I would expect, if you were to ask me what do I think, Johansson plays Friday in Nashville. Vasi plays Saturday at home against Toronto. Vasi has had a little trouble with Toronto since the Lightning beat the Leafs in the 2022 playoffs. I mean, in like regular season numbers, like the Leafs had scored some goals against him.
Yeah.
In that series, though, Vasi was very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
The next year, though, he was not able to give the Lightning some saves at key times. And I'm saying it that way because, I mean, the Leafs were, like, picking corners. Like, remember that Morgan Riley goal from the point? Like, it was right in the top of the net in overtime.
Yeah.
But they found holes. And you look at Vasi's numbers against Toronto the last couple of years, even the one this year, he got pulled, right? So Brian Engblom have chatted. He and I have chatted about this, and Brian believes, you know, if the Lightning are going to be seeing the Leafs in the playoffs, like, he's like, Vasi's going to need to play better, basically, than what he has showed the last couple of years against the Leafs. So does that mean that they want him playing against Toronto on Saturday to try and improve kind of this recent trend or not? We'll see.
Got a question from YouTube. Crystal
Having
says,
said that, as I remember this though, that final game last year, remember when Kucherov got to 100 assists and Austin Matthews was trying to get to 70 goals?
Yeah.
Vasi had a good game in that game.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the money's always going to be on Vasi to perform well, but I think it's a good point that Brian brought up. Look at this. We have our question on the screen here, partner, from
You're gonna
from
have to
Crystal.
read it for our audio listeners.
Yes,
so.
it says, what did you guys think of Hedman not even getting a shot on goal? Do you still think he had a good game? I thought so.
That must have been against Colorado.
I'm assuming Colorado.
Well, part of that, and I don't have the box score and the game sheet in front of me again, but part of that might have been due to the fact that his ice time, it's kind of like Kucherov played under 19 minutes. As I say this, I will actually look it up, so I'm not speaking completely
I'm going to open it up too here.
off the cuff.
Games.
So,
Box score.
yeah, let's check Hedman's ice time.
Was it under 20?
Victor played 1957. So his minutes were down a little bit. Some of that was score effects, right? He had 3 shot attempts, 2 were blocked, 1 missed the net. I think some of it was he played a little bit less, and I don't think that's a big deal. The Lightning also went 2 for 2 in the power play, and certainly the first one they scored very quickly. So where would Hedman probably, like if he doesn't have a shot on net, where might he get a shot on net? Power play. The Lightning scored so quickly on their power plays that he didn't really have a chance to shoot. I don't think it's a big deal. What I would like to see from Victor Hedman is when he shoots, hit the net. I don't have the stats in front of me of how many of his shots have missed the net. And I don't think it's like the ratio is not like completely out of whack, but he shoots so hard that he can beat goalies. But if he's missing the net, the goalie doesn't have to worry about stopping the shot.
He's had some of the hardest shots, I think, this year.
He has.
Right? You know where they do now the stat.
There was one against Dallas, and it was an unscreened shot. And Ottinger was able to glove it. It was in the second period. He ripped it, but Ottinger saw it and caught it. And Steve had said that was Hedman's. Steve Versnick looked it up. It was his hardest shot of the year.
It's like 98.
98, yeah.
Or something.
Something like that.
This is from Dave on YouTube. He says, Geeky won't shine as much on the new kid line, but I like it as the 3. The real question is, Hag, Sorelli, Cooch, or Gensel Point, Cooch?
Well, Hag, Sorelli, X. That's the way it's been the last couple of games. So they have been the line with the 2 forwards when the Lightning are going 11-7. So it is both of those, Hagel, Sorelli, Cooch, and Gensel Point, Cooch.
Yeah.
When Cooch gets double shifted. Chafee is now hurt, but Chafee had been seeing time.
Yeah.
Like spot duty with Sorelli and Hagel.
And Nick Paul
has been there.
Nick Paul.
Well,
we forget about him, right?
I mean,
But I mean, like he's.
But when they are the line with 2 forwards, we're seeing a mix of players join them.
Yeah.
Now, if the Lightning get back to a 12-6, who's that third forward going to be? Could it be Geeky again, or do they want Geeky to have more time at center? We kind of touched on this a little bit, Greg. Like, I think Geeky's best hockey in the NHL to this point in his rookie year came when he was playing with Sorelli and Hagel.
No doubt about it.
2 pretty good players.
Yeah, right.
But if his future is as a center, having him play that position, I think there is value in that. When Nick Paul comes back, hopefully as soon as next week, maybe they look to put him there again.
Is it about value, though, or is it about getting the best production this year for this team?
Well,
like if Geeky's produced,
right?
yeah, if Geeky's more productive as a wing, playing with Sorelli and Hagel, more so than being a third-line center, and it's better for his development, but the production isn't as great. I don't know. I think the Lightning have options. I mean, ultimately, would you like to see Nick Paul play with Geeky? Maybe we talk about the depth kind of lining up here in a third-line situation, potentially. Then again, we've been talking about 11-7.
Right. Yeah, we'll see what the Lightning decide to do when they get healthy, if everybody else stays healthy.
Yeah.
It seems like it would either be Geeky or Paul, one or the other as the third-line center, and then the other guy playing with Hagel and Sorelli, but we're basing it on what they've done previously this year.
I tell you what, I am, as much as I'm intrigued about Geeky playing with Hagel and Sorelli more, I might even be more intrigued to see what Paul can keep doing in an elevated role, playing with skilled guys. Because I think we're forgetting, before he got hurt, Dave, he was playing some pretty good offensive hockey. Would you agree?
Yep, I agree.
I mean, he was doing everything we thought Nick Paul could do.
Paul was playing with Gensel when Point was injured, and that was the line with 2 forwards.
Yes.
And they rotated Kucherov in, they rotated Chafee in, they rotated Gonsalves in. There was that one game, which game was it? The New Jersey game at home. The Lightning had a really impressive win over the Devils, and Gage Gonsalves played a lot with Paul and Gensel in that game. So the 11-7 has worked pretty well for the Lightning.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the Dallas game is the only game they have lost this year when they've gone 11-7. What are they, 4-1? Because they won on opening night in Carolina, and then they've used 11-7. Maybe there was another one in there. I'm forgetting. Maybe at Winnipeg, which was a very subpar game. They may have gone 11-7 in that game.
The 11-7 for me so far watching this Lightning team, maybe I'm stating the obvious, maybe I'm not. It's more about addressing potentially some depth scoring issues by playing your top guys more than it is you've got a lot of depth on the back end. Although that is true, I think it allows you to play Cooch or Gensel or Point a little bit more throughout the lineup. Yeah. And it gives your lines different looks, and as a result, maybe a little bit more production from guys you wouldn't typically see in a traditional 12-6 setting. That's just my observation early on. I know John Cooper likes it. Does he keep doing it more so this year, percentage-wise? Time will tell, as they do say.
I'm looking at the game by game. That road trip where the Lightning beat Colorado and then lost the next 3, they did not go 11-7.
Okay.
So the game at Winnipeg, Lilleberg was the scratch. The game before that in Minnesota, Radish was the scratch, and the game in St. Louis, Radish was again the scratch.
Gotcha.
So they went 11-7 on opening night. They beat Carolina. If they went 11-7 again before coming out of the bye week and hosting Winnipeg, I'm not remembering that. So since then, they've played 4 home games. They've used 11-7 in all 4, and they've won 3 of those 4. So they are 4-1 overall this year when they've gone with an 11-7 lineup formation, and tonight will be the 6th time. We'll see how they fare against another really good opponent. And they've played some high-end teams going 11-7. Carolina, Winnipeg, New Jersey, Dallas, and Colorado.
Yeah.
And they've gotten 8 out of 10 points in those games.
They have. They have. We appreciate all the questions today.
This is our final show until next Monday. What are we going to do? What are the fans going to do without Power Lunch?
They can tune in to the broadcast tonight because they will hear us in some setting. The game's at 7:30 tonight, right? So we'll be on the airwaves at 7 with the pregame show. And then on Friday, that's a 3 o'clock game, correct?
Yes, we have established this 3
just
o'clock
want to make sure.
time.
I just want to make sure I show up at 2:30 for the pregame.
I'm not going to force you to call the game off the monitor because I'm
That's
late to the press box.
That's all right. But we wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving for sure.
Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your cranberry out of the can, Greg.
Cranberry out of the can. I don't do the cranberry out of the can. Pecan, pecan, you know. Yeah, pecan,
Enjoy
pecan.
your not dry turkey.
My not dry
the
turkey.
Gravy. See, I know all your tendencies.
National Lampoon's
we
Christmas
cover
Vacation, right?
everything on
we do
on Power Lunch.
We do. We get
Happy
to know everybody.
Thanksgiving, everybody. Lots of hockey. 3 games for the Lightning over the next 4 days, and then Greg and I will be back to recap this
and your book
busy
signing
stretch on Monday.
on Saturday.
So
make sure people
Saturday,
stop down.
Right,
Saturday.
If you're coming to the game Saturday, I will be out on Fort Thunder Alley. If you would like to get a book,
please
I will
do.
be there. I will sign it for you.
Maybe
For
even take a
you
picture.
Or for family member, friend, loved one,
Uncle Al,
whatever. Uncle Al. I will put Uncle Al in Sharpie. So Uncle Al is the only person who can get it.
I love it.
You know, I have to tell you, a few people have been like at different signings. They come up and like, yeah, make it out to Mike. I'm like, Mike. You know,
Hey,
do
Mike.
the story, best wishes, blah blah blah.
Right.
And I'm like, by the way, I'm reading it first before I'm giving it to Mike. Like, well,
right.
you bought it, so
Yeah, that's okay.
I guess that's okay.
Hey, partner, as they say, as long as the check clears.
Right. I'm like, Mike
usually
might
how
be
it
a little
goes.
suspicious if they're like dog ears on the
all right. Well,
pages, but
Things highlighted,
once
doesn't
you
matter.
buy it, you can do whatever you want.
You
with
can
it.
do
But
whatever you
yes,
want.
I
There's
will.
no
I will
doubt.
personalize the
Love it.
copy.
I have mine, so I appreciate
You
that.
have yours. Thank you.
I'll see you tonight, partner.
See you tonight.
Great job. Happy Thanksgiving again. And to all, be safe. We will talk to you on Monday, and we will have some good hockey talk for you there. A lot to recap, no doubt about it. Thanks to Steve Versnick and Jarrett Johnston as well. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.